On the morning of June 16, 1943, Captain Jay Zeamer, Jr. piloted a heavily modified B-17 bomber nicknamed Old 666 into the skies above the Pacific. At just 24 years old, Zeamer had taken a bomber that had been considered cursed, abandoned in a boneyard, and rebuilt it with a crew of outcasts and volunteers. They called themselves the Eager Beavers, and they were known for accepting the missions no one else wanted. Their target that day was Buka Airfield and the coast of Bougainville, a critical area requiring photographic reconnaissance for an upcoming marine landing. The mission was deemed suicidal, a solo flight over 1,200 miles of enemy territory, with no fighter escort at high altitude, with the threat of Japanese Zero fighters ever present. In the previous 6 months, over 40 American bombers had been lost on similar missions, and survival rates for unescorted flights had dropped below 30%. Old 666 had been transformed by its crew. They stripped off unnecessary weight, replaced the engines, and outfitted it with more .50 caliber machine guns than any other bomber in the Pacific. It had become a flying fortress in the truest sense, yet no amount of firepower could make the odds fair against swarms of enemy fighters. Aboard were 9 men. Among them was Second Lieutenant Joseph Sarnoski, an experienced bombardier whose orders to return home were effective in just 3 days. He had packed his bags at Port Moresby, but volunteered for this final mission, knowing his skills were crucial to operating the cameras that would capture vital intelligence. The flight began before dawn. When the bomber reached the Buka area at 25,000 feet, 16 Japanese Zeros began climbing from below. The plane had to hold course for its photo mapping run. No evasive maneuvers could be made for the critical minutes needed to capture the images. As the fighters closed in, Sarnoski prepared to defend the nose. He fired upon the incoming aircraft with his twin .50s, downing 1 Zero in the initial wave. But in the chaos of the attack, a 20mm shell exploded near him, throwing him back with grave wounds to his neck and side. Despite his injuries, Sarnoski returned to his gun position and continued to fight, downing 2 more fighters before finally succumbing to his wounds. Captain Zeamer, too, had been seriously wounded. Shrapnel tore through both his legs and wrist, yet he refused to relinquish the controls. Blood filled his boot and pain racked his body, but he held course. The camera run was still underway, and the photographs had to be completed. The mapping of Empress Augusta Bay would be vital to the success of the future invasion, and any deviation could render the images useless. Additional waves of Japanese fighters approached. One flight attacked from above, while another came from below, attempting to bracket the bomber. The crew responded in unison. From the ball turret, Staff Sergeant Forrest Dillman shot down a Zero climbing from beneath. From the waist guns, Sergeants George Kendrick and Herbert Pugh repelled flanking attacks, damaging or destroying multiple aircraft. Despite the intensity of the battle, the mapping run was completed, and Zeamer began a steep dive to bring the plane down to breathable altitude. Their oxygen system had been destroyed, and every crew member relied on personal bottles, which were running dangerously low. The dive saved the crew from hypoxia, but it also exposed them to renewed attacks. Zeros continued to pursue the bomber at lower altitude. Staff Sergeant William Vaughn, manning the tail guns, repelled the final wave with precision, downing another Zero. By the time the Japanese broke off the pursuit, Old 666 had suffered devastating damage: 187 bullet holes, 5 20mm cannon strikes, 1 engine shut down, oxygen and radio systems destroyed, and critical injuries among the crew. With Zeamer barely conscious, co-pilot John Britton took over. They were still over 500 miles from Port Moresby and flying on 3 failing engines. The crew administered first aid to Zeamer, slowing the bleeding as best they could, but his life hung by a thread. As the plane approached the Owen Stanley mountain range, altitude continued to drop. With visibility reduced by weather, Britain relied on instruments to navigate through the mountains. They narrowly cleared the final ridge, and the battered bomber emerged over Port Moresby. Unable to communicate with the tower due to the destroyed radio, Britain executed an emergency landing. Despite damaged hydraulics and minimal control, he brought the bomber down safely with only 200 feet of runway remaining. The ground crew, seeing the damage and the blood-streaked crew emerging from the aircraft, believed the pilot to be dead. But Britain insisted otherwise. Zeamer still had a pulse, weak but present. He was rushed to the field hospital. Doctors gave him slim odds. He had lost more than half his blood, suffered multiple compound fractures, and required urgent surgery. But Zeamer survived. Over the course of 15 months, he endured numerous operations and extensive rehabilitation. Though he walked with a limp for the rest of his life, he returned home, a hero. Second Lieutenant Joseph Sarnoski, the bombardier who had continued to fight despite mortal wounds, did not return. His body was laid to rest with honors. He had fought with valor and sacrifice, dying at his post to protect his crew and complete the mission. The photographs taken by Old 666 proved critical. They revealed increased Japanese buildup at Buka Airfield and provided perfect mapping of the Bougainville coastline. 4 months later, on November 1, 1943, the 3rd Marine Division launched their amphibious invasion using the exact intelligence those photos had provided. The landing was a success, and the images helped save countless American lives. In recognition of their heroism, the mission's crew received the highest honors ever awarded to a single aircrew in U.S. history. Captain Zeamer and Second Lieutenant Sarnoski were both awarded the Medal of Honor, Sarnoski posthumously. The other 7 crew members received the Distinguished Service Cross. Collectively, the mission earned 2 Medals of Honor, 7 Distinguished Service Crosses, and 5 Purple Hearts. Old 666 was repaired and returned to combat, flying 18 more missions before being retired. The plane was eventually brought back to the U.S. and used as a training aircraft before being scrapped in 1945. Crews who flew it later reported that the scars of that fateful mission, patched bullet holes, bloodstains, remained. Captain Zeamer went on to earn a master's degree in aeronautical engineering from MIT and worked in the aerospace industry for decades. He lived a full life and passed away in 2007 at the age of 88. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. The mission of Old 666 remains an enduring story of courage, sacrifice, and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. It is a testament to a crew who volunteered for a mission that others deemed impossible, and who completed it, not just with honor, but with history-making heroism.